Over the last couple of weeks, we've been focusing very much upon adrenal health and how to recognize that you might be in adrenal fatigue or indeed getting near that, particularly as you go through the menopause. Last week's was all about 6 ways to heal naturally, and I'll make sure to link that at the end of this and also in the description box below. You might want to take a listen. Today, I'm going to chat more about how to stay calm when you're under pressure, because let's face it, we are surrounded by stressors internally, externally, things that we can control, things that we can't control. So actually, how do you manage when you're in that situation where there's stress upon stress upon stress upon stress? I'm currently living that right now. I have been doing for probably 18 months, a little bit over, and it's been the situation where you just think things can't get any worse, and then all of a sudden they do. So I'm in the thick of it with you, and I really wanted to talk from my mental health perspective. I'm a qualified psychotherapist for over 17 years. I specialize in anxiety. So I'm making good use of the things that I know work. And I wanted to share those with you specifically today because it's all well and good understanding why we get these stressors. And I think it's really important to understand why these things affect us and how they affect us biologically and emotionally, but also just give you some really simple tips that I've probably not spoken about previously in some of my other videos, and things that you can easily do from home just to put you back in that driver's seat. And it's not about a quick fix, because when we are facing things that are really significantly impacting our stress, they tend to creep up. And healing from stress is also one of those things. It takes a little bit of time, but it can happen a lot faster than you probably think it can. Even if you're in complete burnout, there are things that you can do. And make sure to listen to the 2 previous videos that I've done on the last 2 weeks about this, that you can then rebuild yourself back up, and also recognize, are you in complete burnout or are you near complete burnout? So make sure you keep an eye on those. So if you're new to this, welcome to my channel. My name is Kate Hartley. I've been sharing Menopause Monday videos for years now, always on a Monday. And if you've got anything that you would like me to cover in a future episode, just drop it in the comments box below. If you find this video helpful, please like it. And if you want to subscribe to the channel, click the bell icon, and then you'll be notified. You won't miss any future episodes. So before we start, how do you cope with stress? Is it eating more of the sweeter things? And actually our body tries to make us eat more of the sweet things, and I'll explain why that is in today's episode. Is it, do you drink more? Do you smoke more? Do you get out into nature more often and allow yourself that time off? It would be really interesting to hear what works for you, and also maybe some of the not quite so helpful things that you do. There's no shame about it. We're all human. We all do these things. I myself love red wine, and at the end of a really long day, in fact, not even normally the end, sometimes around 4 o'clock, if I'm really feeling sluggish and I know I need to work for another 2 or 3 hours, I'll have a glass of red wine, and it just keeps me going. It kind of changes my situation. It changes how I feel inside myself. I don't drink to get drunk. I hate that feeling, but I do enjoy a glass or 2 of red wine most nights. So I'm not one of these people that will sit on the fence and let my halo sparkle too much. I'm human with you, and I know that we all have these temptations. So there is no shaming in it. It's just, what it's once you acknowledge what you maybe use in order to help you cope with stress, or what you just take to enjoy life more, there is no shame in that. So yeah, drop that in the comments below, particularly if you found something that's really helpful that helps you manage stress more effectively. First of all, I'm going to go over some of the hidden dangers of stress, and also maybe give some clarity around things you may not already be aware of. So stress ulcers. Now, these are different from peptic ulcers that you might be familiar with. Peptic ulcers tend to develop in the stomach lining or the small intestine. They're often caused by a bacteria called H. pylori, and that actually weakens the integrity of the stomach lining. Also, long-term anti-inflammatories like ibuprofen can also contribute to the degradation of that stomach lining, which can then also lead to increasing your risk of developing a peptic ulcer. Stress ulcers, on the other hand, are caused literally by long-term stress. They are not related to the H. pylori bacteria, and the long-term stress can make the internal environment of your stomach more acidic, and that can contribute to the development of these stress ulcers. So what actually happens when we're under stress? It actually restricts the blood flow to our digestive system because if, for instance, we need to run away from a danger, we don't need to be focusing on our reproductive or our digestive system. We also hear of, you've got your fight and flight response. With your relaxation response is your rest and digest. So that will help you remember that when you're stressed, your digestive system will negatively be impacted. Things like in irritable bowel syndrome, you often find that if you are stressed, if you already have IBS, your symptoms are likely to become worse. But also long-term stress can actually lead to the development of irritable bowel syndrome. But just be mindful that stress will have a negative impact on your gut health. And the longer that you're under that chronic stress and also not taking steps to improve it, your risks of developing these ulcers significantly increases. Next is stress and the diabetes 2 link. Now, you might be really surprised to hear that, but in actual fact, chronic stress, so long-term stress, can increase your chances at developing diabetes 2, even if you don't eat sugary foods, you avoid the refined sugars, the refined carbs, you're still at greater risk of developing diabetes 2 when you're under long-term stress. When you're under stress, your body releases cortisol and adrenaline, our two stress hormones. The problem with that is that when your stress hormones are released, they switch the body's fuel source to glucose because, again, you're in that fight and flight position. So you probably need to run away fast from the danger. The body does not recognize different types of stressors. It just knows that you're stressed. And so essentially it's helping you survive, because in the good old days when we were being chased by tigers and things, we needed to run or we needed to fight in order to save ourselves. These days we're not. We're sat behind desks. We're like stressed about deadlines. We are stressed about our finances. We are stressed about the dynamics of our relationships. And we are allowing that stress to build up. We're not doing the remedial things that we need to do, or doing them often enough in order to mitigate that. So the body using this glucose is then, over long term, your body becomes insulin resistant, which is then technically the onset of diabetes 2. Your body actually turns protein into glucose. That's called gluconeogenesis. The one big thing about that is it also makes your muscles disintegrate. I mean, not like vanish, but cortisol has this catabolic effect on your body, including your bones, your skin. So that's why you see under long-term stress, also with smokers, because of the stress that smoking causes, you see that wrinkling, the degradation of your bones, and also the muscle loss. So as we go through menopause specifically, as our estrogen falls, our cortisol levels naturally rise. So that is one of our stress hormones. That cortisol is nibbling away at your body tissues, which is why stress management is just so key when you're going through menopause. Because the body is reaching to your glucose for immediate fuel sources, that can also then contribute to the onset of that belly fat. Because when cortisol is released, it increases the amount of insulin in your bloodstream. Well, insulin is your fat storing hormone. So when you're under chronic stress, it's likely that you will get belly fat, even if you're doing all the things to ensure that you're not getting that belly fat. For me right now, because I've been under such long-term stress, I can feel the fluff around my middle. Even though I'm strength training regularly, I'm really ninja on my nutrition, I get outside regularly, certain things, when the stressors pile up, there is not an awful lot you can do about that. And one of the worst things you can do is stress about that belly fat, because when you get on top of your stressors, or you feel like you're more in control of them, then that belly fat will then go away again. But it is just understanding that when you're under long-term stress, belly fat is actually going to be there. You also may have noticed that when you're under long-term stress, your immune system gets affected. And it's a really important thing to know, this is because you might find that, if you've had glandular fever, that will flare up again. If you suffer with cold sores, they're likely to flare up again. I developed a verruca a while back. I've had a verruca since I was a child. I developed a sore in my nose. I mean, it's just like, where are these things coming from? When you're under long-term stress, it really does have a negative impact on your immune system. So it suppresses the T cells. The T cells are the killer cells. Those are what help us gobble up the cancer cells that are in our bodies, because we all have cancer cells. Those T cells are the killer cells that generally gobble up cancer. So just from the angle of looking after your long-term health, that you are managing your stress as effectively as possible. Stress also disrupts cytokines. Those are molecules in the body that help to reduce inflammation. And it also suppresses the development of your lymphocytes. So those are your white blood cells, which also help to, they boost your immune system. They help keep us healthy. Those are the things that are gobbling up the viruses. So for several different reasons, your immune system is compromised when you're under long-term stress. You will also find that for people who have autoimmune disease, if you've developed an autoimmune disorder, you were probably under long-term stress before that started. So things like rheumatoid arthritis, fibromyalgia, lupus, multiple sclerosis, these things are often linked to chronic high levels of stress before they develop. Not always, but in a lot of instances, that is the case. And then with stress and inflammation, you've got the cortisol paradox. So cortisol in the right amounts in our body is really healthy. It's actually anti-inflammatory. But when you've got long-term cortisol in your body, you form this resistance to cortisol. So a bit like with diabetes 2, you become insulin resistant. The same applies to stress and cortisol. You can become cortisol resistant. So when you're under long-term stress, you might find that you've got these inflammatory things bubbling under the surface, and you may have been given prednisone by your healthcare provider in order to reduce that inflammation. Prednisone for short term is likely to reduce that inflammation, but long term, make sure you read the side effects in the packet because it has some serious implications. Pretty much the same as long term natural exposure to elevated levels of cortisol. So we really want to be controlling the release of our stress hormones before we end up in that sort of that rotation of medications and side effects and trying to clamber back through lifestyle in order to get yourself to a healthy point. Even if you're taking prednisone, even if you developed an autoimmune disease, make sure that you do apply, and you probably are already applying these things I'm going to share today, but make sure that you're applying them so that you, in the instance that you're able to avoid developing some of these horrible long-term health crises, that you're actually in the driver's seat. You think, okay, I can actually do that. And I think we all say, oh, I haven't got time for deep breathing. I haven't got time for relaxation. I haven't got time for this. I haven't got time to care for myself. That is something that you really need to reframe in your mind. Your health is incredibly important to you. And when you're not functioning healthily, when stress has literally pulled the rug out from underneath you, you're no use to anyone, let alone yourself. So it is absolutely vital that you do take steps to mitigate the stress that you're exposed to, but also to look after yourself so that you develop a better resilience to stress, because stress is always going to be out there. When you think about athletes, Olympic athletes, the sort of the top echelon of athletes, when they are preparing for their race or their competition, you look at them and they always look really relaxed. They train the mental aspect of sport elitism is huge. And they'll be visualizing themselves possibly winning the race. They'll be visualizing themselves being calm. Because when we're in a stress state, we can't perform as effectively as if we're in a more relaxed state. Even if you're going to be doing a sprint run, your body still needs to be in a stress-free state, it needs to be in a relaxed but ready state. And I remember when I used to run a golfing company for a ladies' golfing company with an ex-boyfriend of mine. And part of the sort of the day out for the ladies at these beautiful golf clubs was to talk about the psychology of mindset on your golf and how effective that can make your game and how it can improve your game by visualizing your success, by visualizing your relaxation, by taking the stress away from it. And that applies to any aspect of our life. If we can be relaxed yet ready, we will perform a lot better. We'll be more creative in our thought processes. We'll be able to sort of take a step back before we react. And often we're reacting with a sort of an emotional, the amount of people, you see it on social media these days, it's just like people have these very definitive yes or no, this is what you do, this is what you shouldn't do. Whereas there's a lot of grey areas. But you see it time and time again. People react with an immediate emotional, just fairly unkind reaction in a lot of instances. And when you step back from that, and when you're able to step back from that, it just gives you that space to think, oh, maybe I don't know everything, or maybe there is an alternative viewpoint that I should consider, or maybe no, I know I'm right, but I'm actually just not going to react negatively against it because it, I gain nothing by that. I don't need to be proven right in order to feel better about myself. But there's a lot of unawareness of that out there, and the more we can bring that awareness to our daily lives and how we react to people and things around us has a profound impact on our mental health. And it's not about having the winning or having the one up on someone. It's about being able to detach from that need completely and just, yeah, live and let live, allow it to go. And there will be people out there who are just niggling away, they're scratching away at that itch, trying to like really annoy you or frustrate you, or maybe you're lucky you don't have exposure to those sorts of people. There are a lot of people out there who are being negatively impacted by that sort of behavior. And when you can become ambivalent to it, so meaning, you're not, doesn't really matter one way or the other to you because you just get on with your life, that is a great way of releasing so much pent up energy around something that you actually have no control over, because people, the way people respond to you, it's about them, it's not about you. You can still think somebody is wrong but approach that person with kindness and respect rather than what we see so often out there these days. So understanding that you always have this choice on how to let things affect you. And I'm not talking about just lying over and just thinking, oh, well, that's fine. Yeah, we just lost, she was our pet and a very beloved pet. And we've been absolutely heartbroken. And I can't, no matter how sort of chilled I try and be about it, I can't bring her back. And I'm still incredibly sad. I've honestly feel like when she died, she took a little piece of my heart with her. And I'll probably feel like that for a long, long time. So it's not about ignoring your emotions, but it is about recognizing where you're at. And when you're dealing with certain things that cause you pain, if it's somebody, niggling away at you, try and step back from that, or even remove yourself from that situation, which I know takes energy, which is why you need to be managing your stress effectively. So if you think, actually, I cannot deal with this any longer, you're in a position to make that change to result in long-term peace and contentment for yourself. I think that's also why affirmations and visualization, if you can do that in the morning, are so powerful, or whenever it suits you, to be quite honest. It might suit you better at night time, but you're just priming your system with something that gives you hope, it gives you peace. If I'm under, or when I'm under intense pressure, I always say to myself, I'm greater than my fears. And it's so simple, but it helps to, it just gives me that sense of, yeah, I am greater than my fears. And my heroine, my hero is Boudica. And whenever I'm up against a wall, I think of Boudica and her strength and her bravery and her courage, and it does something inside of me. It helps me lift up and meet the challenge again. And it's really important that I think we all find that thing that inspires us within, so that when we're feeling beaten down, it takes no effort at all just to think about, okay, maybe I can reframe this. Maybe I can generate some energy from inside by changing my the way I'm framing this situation at the moment. It's a very empowering tool to have at your arsenal, and we all have access to it. So if you've not yet done so, find some affirmations that work for you. Consider, who is your hero, heroine? What would he or she be doing? Why is that your hero? And those values that you identify with your hero, they're deep inside of you too. We all have this capacity to step into much larger shoes than we put on every day, metaphorically. And it's about you understanding that you have that capacity. It's about seeing yourself as, yes, I actually could do that. Because you can. You have so much more power than you actually allow yourself to believe you do. So as soon as you start to think, it's shitty, there are things going on, I don't have an awful lot of control over those, but I have this inner sense of anchoredness, power, however you see it, that works best for you. really focus in on that, and make sure to focus in on it on a daily basis, because that will help to develop that flame, that furnace of where you continue to build from. And you'll find that some days you feel stronger than others. That's just the ebb and flow of life. But even on those days when you're feeling really beaten down and weak, you can still focus on that little spark inside. That spark is always there, and it's waiting for you to give it oxygen, to breathe life into it. And only you can breathe life into that little spark to get it going. Next thing is body awareness. So right now, okay, you're not thinking about what your right earlobe feels like. I actually don't know if I can actually feel my right earlobe unless I touch it. But the same applies for your, your face, your jaw, your scalp. So right now, how are the muscles feeling around your eyes? Mine feel really tight. So do my cheeks, so does my jaw. You do that. How does that feel? I bet you have got tension in your face, in your scalp. How does your scalp feel? If you massage your scalp now, it feels lovely. You know those like spider things that you stick on the top of your head and it goes and they feel lovely. Focus on really relaxing all the tiny little muscle fibers in your scalp, around your eyes, in your forehead. You might need to help them relax. I have to do that to my forehead to help get rid of some of the wrinkles and to help them just relax a little bit more. And if you find it difficult to feel that tension, maybe really squint it all up. And then I know face yoga people say never do that because you're not supposed to squint your face up, but I find that really helps, particularly with the bigger muscles of your body. So for instance, you're probably finding in the back of your neck, your shoulders, your back, upper back, lower back, your arm muscles, have you got tension in there? I bet you have. We've probably got tension in most of the areas of our body. So when you become aware of that, you can do this total body scan. And it literally is, you maybe do it in bed or just sit there for a few minutes every day and just really focus. Where do you feel the tension and how can you release that tension? How can you let that relax? One of the ways I love to do this, and it's scientifically proven to really stimulate the relaxation response, is to lie flat on my back on the floor with my legs up against the wall. It is a yoga pose, but it helps to stimulate the lymphatic system, because you're just draining back down into the body. If you can stimulate your lymphatic system, that's going to help to boost your immune system. It does stimulate the relaxation response, apart from the fact it feels lovely. And that is something that you might want to do while you're doing a full body scan. Next one is deep breathing. And we always say go in through your nose, and out through your nose for box breathing. I would say if you're doing deep breathing, really deep breathing, then probably out through your mouth when you're breathing out. So box breathing, for instance, you breathe in through your nose for 4 seconds, hold it for 4, breathe it out through your nose for 4, and then hold it out for 4 or 6 or 8, depending on what you can manage easily. If you struggle with long-term stress, you may just do 2 seconds, 2, 2, 2, and then work on improving that amount. For deep breathing, breathe it in through your nose, ideally for say 6 seconds, hold it for 8 seconds and breathe it out slowly through your mouth for about 10 seconds. You always want your out breath to be longer, slower than your in breath ideally. And if you can hold it for the same amount of time as your in breath or even longer, that is really going to stimulate. It stimulates the vagus nerve, which goes across the front of the abdomen, which is going to stimulate your relaxation response. We have to actively relax. So we don't have any sort of passive action to our parasympathetic nervous system, which is our relaxation nervous system. So we need to actively do things to help us bring down that stress response. And full body scan, being aware of our mindset and how we react to things, and also deep breathing and box breathing is absolutely going to bring down that stress response. And you cannot be stressed and relaxed at the same time. It's a complete physical impossibility. So when people come to me for anxiety related issues, one of the first things I teach them is deep breathing. And most people go, what, I'm paying a therapist to be taught how to deep breathe. But when they learn it, it's amazing how profound it is and what an impact it has on your life, and just helping you manage. You can get out of panic attacks with deep breathing. It's having that awareness and also really respecting it for the powerful tool that it is, rather than poo-pooing it as just some kind of like weird technique. It is so, so powerful. And there isn't one person out there in the mental health space who will not promote the importance of deep breathing, because it is so, so profound. And one of the reasons why the breathing through the nose is so important is the fact that it does encourage deeper diaphragmatic breathing, because often when we're stressed, we just breathe up in the sort of top section of our lungs. You really want to focus on getting that breath right down as far as you can. And also you're releasing nitric oxide when you are breathing through your nose. You cannot release nitric oxide through your mouth. The mouth breathing tends to be more, if you're running away in a panic, you're going to be breathing through your mouth. But when you're breathing through your nose with that diaphragmatic breathing, with the nitric oxide, you're further stimulating that relaxation response, just in case you were thinking. I like to know why. So that's why nasal breathing is so much more powerful than just mouth breathing. Next one is movement. I'm a huge fan of strength training, but if you're in adrenal fatigue, you probably need to stop everything for a few days until you feel that you're not quite as fatigued as you were. Even things like walking up the garden might exhaust you. Climbing the stairs, you feel that vile pulling on your legs. Sometimes I went back, I did a couple of strength training workouts last week. Bearing in mind, it's a Tough Mudder advanced program, so it is quite challenging. But I backed off again for a few days because I just found that while I could do it, I was still just so tired, and I thought, I'm really going to listen to my body, because I know I'm walking that very fine tightrope between complete burnout and being in a position where I'm avoiding that and taking the necessary steps to not get to that burnout phase. So while strength training is something that I just highly recommend for everyone, if you're really at the end of your tether, you might want to, you don't need many days to start to heal from that burnout, that adrenal fatigue. It's not a medically recognized term, by the way. So your doctor will not say you're in adrenal fatigue. You'll know that you are through the symptoms that you're exhibiting. And just listen to the couple of videos that I've done in the last couple of weeks. They will go into all that in so much detail. So just be mindful that you may need to take a bit of time off just to help you sort of find your inner anchor again, so that you can start to build up gradually. So for me, I will probably go back to 4 strength training workouts next week rather than 5. I'll probably have a rest day in the middle. But then the week after that, I will be back into the full swing of it again, because again, it does really benefit you, so long as you're not walking that very, very fine tightrope. But walking in nature is one of the really easy things you can do. The great thing about nature is trees give off phytoncides. Those are like the essential oils. Those are the fragrances that trees give off, because they protect the trees from pests, disease, aphids, etc. So when they're giving off these phytoncides, we are actually absorbing them as we're breathing, just being out in nature with it. So when you're out in nature, instead of listening to a podcast or the radio or whatever you might be listening to, just completely detached from anything that has to do with like an electronic device. Listen to the sounds of nature. Really make yourself, what can you pick up? Because it's amazing when you get out there and you're thinking, actually, I can hear so much. It's almost like become super sensory, but it's always there, but we just ignore it. So when you become more connected to nature and the outside world, it has this really calming effect. It gives you a sense of belongingness. And I think the connectedness, that's so important, because when you're under high levels of stress, you feel isolated, you feel disconnected. And one of the most potent forms of feeling more connected is getting out into nature. And the next one is oxytocin. So oxytocin is like our hug hormone. When you give birth, you have huge amounts of oxytocin because it helps you bond with your baby. But you can also get oxytocin from cuddling your pets, from donating, from volunteer work, from just work in the community, anything that gives you that feel-good, loving factor, or big hug. When you hug someone you love or that you care for deeply, that releases oxytocin. So do things that help you release oxytocin. The other danger when you're stuck in this sort of stress circle and mental health issues is that you can become incredibly selfish. And I don't mean that horribly. It is just a fact. We focus on everything that affects us. And while we're focusing so much on how things affect us, we phase out some of that stuff around us that we would otherwise pick up on. What we want to really do is to get that connection back out there again, whether it's with people, whether it's just with nature, whether it's with nature and your pets, if you're lucky enough to have pets. and be mindful of that internal dialogue that you, oh, it's like, he bothered me, she bothered me, he said this, da, 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 da. Everything's about you, whereas life is not like that. And when we're sort of sucked into our own little drama, it can be quite hard to get out of that. But when you recognize you're in that, it's then, okay, I'm doing it again. And you can start to focus on the things external to you, which are going to help you feel less isolated, increase your connection, help to stimulate that oxytocin. And it's quite a blunt thing to say, is that a lot of people with a lot of mental health issues have become this sort of, it's all about them. And to a degree it is, and it's really important that you take corrective steps to get yourself away from that situation. But having that awareness around it, and also if you care for somebody who's in that situation, you will find, and you may not have even picked up on it, it's all about them. So encourage them to get out into nature, connect with things that encourage that flow of oxytocin, to become less insular and more external, so that they feel that sense of connection and community again. Because I mean, I'm fiercely independent. I could live on the top of a mountain in a shed, and I think I'd be as happy as Larry. But still, community still is so important. And I don't need to be in the community regularly, but just even having that sense of connection to something else other than myself is really, really important. Even if I don't partake in it very often, I know it's there. And your community might be nature. Your community might be surrounded by wildflowers and the vegetables that you're growing and the plants and the trees that you're cultivating, your hens, your geese, whatever it might be. That might be your community. But it gets you out of just your insular life. You're caring for other things, which is really, really important. So just be mindful of that, whether that relates to you or maybe somebody else that you live with, or that you're helping through a difficult situation. Get them out into what they find peaceful. And you may have to sort of coax them out into the mountains or into the forest regularly, so they start to really notice the impact that it has, the positive impact that it has on their mental health, or indeed your mental health. I don't know anyone who comes back from a walk who says it's horrible, unless it's really, really cold and you didn't go out with the right equipment and you injured yourself or something. But apart from like the extremes, all of us feel so much better when we've been outside connected with nature. So use that as the powerful tool that it is, because it's not just being outside, it's those phytoncides, it's having the ultraviolet on your skin. And also be mindful, there's so many people out there saying, oh, you always need to wear sunscreen. You're blocking the ultraviolet from getting into your skin. I have never ever, unless I'm like lying on a beach, in which case I will wear a healthy sunscreen if I'm actually sunbathing. But if I'm just out and about, I don't wear sunscreen. I never have. And my skin's relatively good for a 54-year-old. Yeah, I've got a few wrinkles and droopy bits these days. I'd love to get rid of my gels, but I don't think the gels are down to the lack of sun. And despite lots of things that have been going wrong, and I do feel burnt out, but I think if I wasn't doing the things that I'm doing regularly, it would be a lot worse than it is. So it is about understanding that ultraviolet is really important for us. You need to have ultraviolet on your skin 20 to 30 minutes a day. And that doesn't mean like in the blistering sunshine. And obviously, if you're in a very, very hot country, you're going to have to probably be in the shade, but outside in the bright sunlight. It also helps you to sleep better because it helps to stimulate your feel-good hormones, but it helps to also release the melatonin later on in the day. And melatonin is your sleepy hormone. And that's a really important aspect of obviously coping with stress more effectively, because sleep is one of the first things to go when you're under long-term stress. So getting out ideally earlier in the day sort of sets your daily clock. So in the morning, we naturally have a spurt of cortisol. It's designed, it helps us get up and get on with the day. And then as the day goes on, that cortisol level reduces. And then by the end of the day, our melatonin is starting to increase, which is then going to contribute to us going to sleep, hopefully more easily. But if you're awake at 2 a.m. and you're like, no, I might as well get up and get on with my day, that is a real sign that your adrenals are in significant stress. So more important than ever, take remedial action to help improve your adrenal health, help to manage your stress better. So remember, it's not about getting rid of stress because it's always out there. It is about building your resilience to stress, but also understanding how your body responds to stress so that you can then take remedial action to stimulate that parasympathetic nervous response, so your relaxation response. And it might mean that you have to cut out a few other things so that you can dedicate half an hour, 45 minutes to it every day. So it doesn't take long. And things like deep breathing, you can do while you're queuing at the shops. You can do it when you're sitting in the car at the traffic lights. You can do your affirmations, you can do your visualizations in bed, you can do them at the traffic lights, you can do them sitting in the queue or standing in the queue at the shops. There is so much that we can do when we're actually not doing anything else, but we're still wasting time. And just finally on that one, if you're late to an important meeting and you're stuck in traffic or the road's been closed or you just left late, leaving late you can change, just get better organized. But if you're stuck and there's something that you have absolutely no control over, there's been an accident, the road's been closed, and isn't it funny how we all like, oh God, bloody accident, the road's closed, it's going to make me late. We actually forget to think about those poor people that have been involved in the accident. We're so disconnected from things that are going on around us. But you have no control over what's going on right now. You're sat in that traffic. So if I were you, if it's warm enough, pull down the window, listen, what's going on in nature if you're not sort of in the middle of a motorway. Have a look around you. What can you see? What can you observe? What birds are flying around? Are there any butterflies or bees out? It really get ninja at, rather than just going along passively and being reactive to whatever the day throws at you, get really good at thinking, okay, what positive can I bring from this situation right now? Because you will find there are positives in nearly every single thing that happens to you. And you might say, no, this vile thing happened to me in the past. I hear you. I know what that's like. You can learn from that. And there are, when I say that nearly everything, there are certain things where they've happened and really there is nothing to take that's positive from it. I know I'm with you on that one 100%. But for the vast majority of things, the more mundane things, let's say, you can draw something that's positive from it. And when you can do that and you can bring that into a daily habit, it's amazing how it will lift your spirits. It will improve your resilience to stress. It will make you sleep better because you're just feeling happier in general. And when things do happen, it gives you a sense of, okay, well, this is happening to me. And this is really, what's happening to me is really crappy. And I'm going to allow myself to try and I'm going to try and disconnect the negative emotions around it. I'm going to work around dealing with it more effectively. And we're all unique, so we all have to find our own way of dealing with things. But for me, in certain instances, I can't change the fact that my pet died. So it's about trying to remember the really happy times and still feeling that grief, but ruminating over why and when and the sadness of that doesn't bring her back. So the things I did do was like create this just like the most beautiful grave for her, and I'm busy drying petals from roses at the moment that I'm going to put on her grave. And those are proactive things that I can be doing that actually give me pleasure to do. I took paw prints of her after she died, and I thought, is that a bit morbid? But I'm so glad I did. And from all these little things, the paw prints are in the kitchen. I'm going to make a collage of them. I'm going to actually get them mounted create an image from them and put them with one of my favorite photos of her. And then we'll have that on the wall in the house. But these little things that we can do, while it doesn't stop the really heart-wrenching thing happening, there are things that we can do around that that somehow make it more manageable. And I think that's when, if you've lost somebody very dear to you, or you've lost a child, or something that literally, how can you find anything positive from that? That's why so many parents, I think, then start charities around maybe the reason why their child died or their loved one died or was killed, in order to funnel that energy into something more positive. And it's a way of dealing with your grief in, I suppose, a more action oriented, I'd like to say more positive way, because I think we all deal with grief differently. But I can really understand why people would want to contribute to a greater cause. Again, it's that sense of community, it's that sense of connection, and there will be some oxytocin in that as well. It's even when you're unfortunate enough to be part of a community of survivors, lucky enough but unfortunate enough, because of that grief, sometimes the shame, the guilt that you're the survivor and they're not. That those groups are so powerful because of the sense of community and connection that they bring with them, and hence that oxytocin. So I know this has been quite a long one. I think it's really important. I think talking about our mental health, understanding what goes on under the bonnet is absolutely crucial, because if you understand what's happening, then you can think, okay, that is why I need to do that. Often we're told just to do things, and if we don't understand why, it has no real purpose. It has no, so you can't sort of attach it to the thing that is causing the issue in the first place. So take these steps and then put it in the comments. What have I shared today that you might want to start to do, that you feel that would be the easiest for you to start to do? Is it the deep breathing? Is it the progressive muscle relaxation? So, focusing on the muscles in your body. Is it a combination of those? Is it adjusting your mindset and reframing how you see things happening to you and allowing yourself to disconnect from the meanies out there? Is it about, you found yourself in that incredibly sad situation and you're thinking, okay, well, I could either join this group now, or maybe I should start my own support group. Whatever it is, please drop it in the comments, because it'd be so interesting to hear your story, and also to be able to offer you some support in the comments. I will just end that with the fact that if you want a little bit more support, you're very welcome to join my Thrive and Revive collective. It's a Facebook group. I didn't know what to call it, and we deal with adrenal health. We deal with, it's all menopause related, it's all women only, and it's mental health related, fat loss related. There's free workouts in there. There's loads of free resources that I share, that I create, and it's a really supportive community if you're looking for something where you just want to be with women of a similar age, and there's nothing in there to sell or to buy. It's not one of those sorts of groups. It's just a really nice supportive community. So we'd love to see you in there if you'd like to join. If you do request to join, please answer the questions at the beginning. They're not designed to catch you out. It's just that there's a lot of weirdos out there, and I want to make sure that if you're wanting to join, that you're a real human. I've even had requests from spam accounts that have been created with my friend's name. So the questions are not exhaustive, but people request to join and they haven't answered the questions, and I will decline it. I'll give you feedback why, so that you can come back and request again. But it's just too much of a risk, and I want it to be a safe community. So if you'd love to join us, I would love to see you in there. And again, the link for that is in the description box below. So I hope this has been helpful to you. If I've missed anything that you think would be really valuable to share, again, please put that in the comments below. But remember to have a look at the last two previous videos, because those go over, last week was the 6 main things that you can take to help yourself heal naturally. So I've not really gone over nutritional supplements today at all. And the first one was a really sort of big deep dive around adrenal fatigue. And I think you'd find those both very helpful. So thank you for your company today, and I hope you have a safe, happy and healthy week, and look forward to chatting with you next week.